Thank you very much, Colin. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you all for coming today. And I really mean that, because I know there are several dozen local authorities here, and you are the key to unlocking this. We're here to put our heads together on a subject that is certainly most important to me, and I know it is shared by many of you as well. Many of us have long believed in the role boarding schools can have in helping vulnerable young people turn their lives around after a turbulent start. These young people often find themselves marginalised or struggling to get ahead in mainstream education, usually through disruption or challenges at home, but almost always through no fault of their own. Some will be in danger of falling out of school altogether, into a cycle of disadvantage and underachievement, and many that will define the rest of their lives. There can be few sadder examples of society missing its chance to step in and help. Many of you I know have been helping for a long time, and I would certainly like to say thank you to all of you who have done that, for the simply life-changing impact that you have done for those children. Please carry on. Countless numbers of vulnerable children, young people, have been educated at state and independent boarding schools throughout the UK over the decades, thanks to the partnership efforts in this room, from charities to schools to local authorities. But why should you keep on doing this? Well, independent research and anecdotal evidence consistently emphasise the benefits for these young people of boarding school life, with its structure, sense of community, and for some, a place of safety for the first time in their lives. And maybe just to stray off my script for a moment, I was at one of these institutions 45 years ago, and I can assure you that they are nothing like as brutal as they were when I was there. One particular anecdote is in my boarding house of 60 boys, we had 8 baths and only enough water to fill each bath once. And on an average afternoon, 50 of those boys would be playing sports. So if you can do your arithmetic, you will work out how much bath water had to serve the number of children. As someone who was useless at sport, I managed to slip in early, have a hot, clean bath, and slip out before all the big, masculine sportsmen arrived. But that doesn't go on any longer. Way back, local authorities themselves funded thousands of boarding school places, and Colin indeed tells me that he went to a boarding school himself funded by the Essex County Council. And one of my predecessors, Lord Adonis, was funded as a boarder by Camden Council, and I'm sure any of you who've heard him speak on the subject would be moved by his own passion of how it helped him put his life in the direction that he's ended up in. While a good few local authorities have made small numbers of placements in mainstream straight and independent boarding schools in recent years, all local authorities have faced a similar challenge of limited experience of these institutions and the funding required. About a year ago, a group of us sought to meet that challenge head-on by launching the Boarding School Partnership under Colin's leadership, and this was really at the instigation of my predecessor, Lord Nash, who shares my passion for trying to move this debate on a bit. The clue is the word partnerships, because this is a voluntary collaboration between boarding schools, charities, local and central government, all pooling resources to help local authorities carry on placing children in boarding schools whenever there is a demonstrable need for it. Boarding School Partnerships does many laudable things. At its core, it exists to give young people from a variety of backgrounds a stable, caring and supportive environment in which they can better fulfil their potential. There are more than 500 boarding schools in the UK, including state-maintained schools and academies. Many currently support vulnerable young people, co-funded by charities and local authorities. So do visit the Boarding Schools Partnership website, where you can read personal accounts from some of the many children that have had the opportunity to be in boarding. If you doubt at all the transformative effect boarding schools can have on young people who've had a tough start in life, I can promise you that you will find it both humbling and uplifting. It operates as an online portal which local authorities can use to find out about state and independent boarding schools, as well as specialist charities, whenever they need to call on outside help. The partnership provides a ready source of expertise at the click of a mouse whenever a local authority needs it, even if it's not something that you might do regularly. Away from the desktop, Boarding School Partnerships is proving to be an effective network for local authorities to discuss specific boarding placements with one another, as well as with the charities who continue to do so much good work in this area. Today's conference is a further step forward in this enterprise. It highlights the programme by the Norfolk County Council, which 10 years ago became the first local authority for many decades to commit regular resources to funding boarding school placements. We're going to see why they did it, what they've achieved, and why we believe it makes such a compelling case study for other local authorities to consider. We will also hear this morning how the Norfolk Boarding School Partnerships, as it is now known, has succeeded in improving educational and social outcomes for children and young people in and on the edge of care. I also know that my fellow ministerial colleague at the DFE, Minister Zahawi, who holds the overall portfolio for looked after children, is keen to ensure that these children get access to the full breadth and depth of educational opportunities both in the state independent boarding and non-boarding sector. It is much more than a way of subsidising an independent or boarding school education for the lucky few. I'm pleased that this research, the details of which we will hear of in a few minutes, underscores the importance of boarding school partnerships as a catalyst for change. We know that local authorities have to cope with large numbers of vulnerable young children. They are constantly searching for different ways to solve often very complex problems. Every young person is different with particular needs and situations. Any boarding placement needs to be carefully planned, matched and supported. But with the skill and dedication local authorities demonstrate on a daily basis, it can be life-changing. You can't just flip open the independent school's yearbook. It is something which requires real commitment and skill. And I hope that part of the event today will give confidence to local authorities who haven't done this, but by speaking to Norfolk and any others involved, it might give you that extra confidence to take it to the next stage. The research from Norfolk Boarding School Partnerships, which has been validated by the UCL's Institute for Education, shows the potential reward for many vulnerable young people in and on the edge of care if local authorities make this commitment to boarding school placements. In Norfolk, many children and young people who were expected to become looked after came off the risk register completely, and some who were looked after stopped being so. That success has helped prove that this approach can be cost effective. The fees of even the most expensive independent boarding schools are 50 to 60% of that of the annual cost of a looked after child. That alone makes 3 to 5 years in a boarding school financially viable. I accept that the cohort surveyed is relatively small, but the strength of the report is in its longitudinal nature. For state boarding and also independent schools where bursaries are available, the financial case can be even more compelling. And the recently published joint understanding between the DFE and the Independent Schools Council commits its members to better target its bursaries on disadvantaged children, including looked after children. However, I want to be completely clear, we must not see this as a cost-saving exercise. We should only place pupils when and where it is most appropriate for that child or young person. The evidence of this research has in some ways been the missing link in our boarding school partnerships because of the unique accountabilities and challenges faced by local authorities. Norfolk County Council, which began its boarding placements with the help of the Royal National Children's Foundation, is showing other local authorities how to use the data and experience it's collated on behalf of young people in and on the edge of care. There are a few issues that I feel so passionately about, and which I am more delighted to endorse. Please, all of you, do read the report about what boarding school placements could do for at least some of the children in and on the edge of care in your own authority. Make up your own minds. Take it back to your colleagues. Sit down and discuss what Norfolk County Council has achieved. It really is an encouraging story, and one which surely could and should be repeated up and down the country. I'd like to congratulate and thank Norfolk County Council and its 11 boarding school partners. I'd also like to thank the Boarding Schools Partnership for everything it's done in bringing this excellent research to fruition. If we are to make this a country that truly works for everyone, we have to do much more to deliver equality of opportunity for every child, including the most vulnerable, and indeed that is the motivation for me doing this job at the moment. This is one of those all too rare occasions when the humane and compassionate solution also happens to be one that delivers the best outcome as well as value for money. With your help, it is one that I hope can be embraced by authorities across the country. In closing, I'd particularly like to thank officials from local authorities who've taken the time out to come here today. I know there is caution and even scepticism in parts of your sector, but it will be you that makes this happen, and I believe there has never been a better time to reach out to the independent sector. You have here today the people who can help you achieve that. I'll now pass over to Wendy Thompson, the Managing Director of Norfolk County Council, who will explain everything in more detail. Welcome, Wendy.